Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a couple more baby cards using other products from the Pretty Pink Posh May release. I already posted a video making a couple other cards from products of this release, and I will have a link in the end screen at the end of the video to that video if you've missed it. Today I'm part of an Instagram hop to share like inspiration, all the things. So I will have a link to my Instagram in the description box below the video if you want to hop on over there and check it out, and there'll be links to all the other makers sharing inspiration, things like that. I will also have a link to the new release directly below the video, and then I will have all my supply list, links to all the supplies I used as always, and those are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that order at no extra cost to you. That's what helps pay the bills, fund the channel, keep me from freezing in the winter. So we are going to get into making some super fun shaker cards. Love it. Ink blending, a little bit of splatter. Biggest thing is the shaker. So if you keep watching, I'm going to show you guys how I made these cards. My color inspiration was directly pulled from one of the new shaker beads mixes that are part of this release, which I just showed on the screen there. This is the Spring Pop shaker beads, and I thought they were really cute, and I was like, oh, this would be just works for like, because it's basically rainbow colors, and I was like, ooh, that'll work for baby cards, why not? So I went through my ink stash and pulled colors, and all of them are from the Simon Says Stamp Rainbow Splash line, which these inks, I've used them in many videos and I've talked about this. The formula for these is the same as Simon Says Stamp's Positively Saturated inks, same company. The Rainbow Splash line they started was for kind of a more approachable line, sort of for beginners and for those that might struggle like finding rainbow colors and stuff like that. So I'll have all the colors that I use listed, but I started with Canary. I always start with my yellow when I'm doing things like rainbow and ink blending. One, using the yellow first gets me kind of a visual, like sort of in the center of whatever it is I'm ink blending, and then I can work my way out. And I also like doing that so that I don't end up picking up any other colors into my like yellow tools. So started with Canary, and then I went in with Pumpkin. Pumpkin I used a very light hand when I was blending, because I do not want, like, it is a pretty bright, intense color. Like, all these colors are pretty bright, but I was trying very hard to keep this light because I'm going to be stenciling over it, so I didn't want, like, full, intense color. And I'm using my blending brushes, and I am blending all of this onto some smooth white cardstock. So I did Canary, Pumpkin, Ballet for the pink, Lime green, and then Lake for the blue. So I blended that on, didn't worry about my blend being perfect, because as these dry, they do smooth out. As they dry back, they soften, smooth out all the things. And then I'm also obviously stenciling on top. So I stuck my backgrounds to one of my Altenew Ultra Sticky Mats. And I'm using the exact same colors, and I'm going over with just the base stencil first of the Pretty Pink Posh Layered Onesies stencil set. And still not going in full strength here. My original plan in my head was to do this and then do the detail stencil at top with like full strength, but then I changed my mind because I was like, because that would look cute too, like do like the rainbow colors, just more intense. But then I was like, ooh, this would look really cute though if I did white pigment ink. So that's what I did. So I pulled out one of my white pigment inks, and I have a Ranger blending tool with one of the little flat foams, and this foam I keep dedicated to just white pigment ink, and you can't like really tell on camera, but I'm like kind of pouncing it and twisting it a little bit just to get the ink into, because like some of the polka dot details are very small, so to get it in there. I don't like, especially with pigment inks, like I don't mind it with oxides, but pigment inks especially, I don't really like using brushes with, because pigment inks are just a very much different consistency. And I find that brushes just kind of will move it around, but not really deposit as much, if that makes sense. So that's where I prefer to use things like blending foams, sponges, my paper pouncers, etc. So, and then the other thing with this is after I did these backgrounds, I'm going to heat set this. You either need to let it like dry for a good long time, because again, pigment inks do take longer to dry. They sit on top of the cardstock. But I also do just actually prefer just heat setting it. It just kind of, it's like a little extra insurance that things are like set, dry. I'm not going to smear it, etc. So I just use my heat tool and then made sure I got everything completely dry. I did that to both of the panels. And then once I was done, I just wipe off the sticky mat and go on to the next phase of these cards, which is going to be splatter. Surprise. So I'm using my Pigment Studios paper splatter liquid watercolor in the liquid white snowflakes. So just a little bit of shimmer, you know, nothing too crazy, but it just gives it that extra something. So I put those backgrounds into my splat box, put some of the splatter onto my little palette, and then just use my fan brush and just splattered this all over these backgrounds. Again, though, it just gives it that little extra something, but it's not like in your face like most of my other cards. And it just looks pretty when you tilt it in the light. So I set those aside to dry. And then for the shaker, I'm using the Pretty Pink Posh Onesie shaker dies. And the main die cuts like a onesie shape with a little stitch detail. And if you're familiar with Pretty Pink Posh, you'll know like lots of their wafer dies have that stitch detail. It's very, as soon as I see it, I always know it's like one of their wafer dies, just the way they do it. And then there's another die that you can use to cut out the center portion to make the onesie a frame, which is what's going to make it a shaker. So I die cut 4 pieces of white cardstock with the outline with the stitching, and then 2 of them I use the interior piece to make them frames, and then the solid ones I'll come back to later because that's going to back my shaker element. And then to actually make it a shaker, I took some acetate. This is Simon Says Stamps acetate, and it comes with this like kind of tissue in between the sheets, and I kept that in place. Another thing you can do is if you don't have like tissue, you can use like copy paper or even a piece of cardstock, because die cutting acetate, I've talked about this in other videos, gets a little finicky because it just doesn't want to die cut. So if you put a layer of like cardstock, copy paper, anything like that between, so you've got your wafer die, your acetate, cardstock, your die cutting plate, that will give it a little extra like kind of pressure to press it through the acetate. These I didn't cut because I didn't add, I just used the tissue that was, you know, there. So they didn't die cut completely. However, these are fairly simple shapes. So I just, as you can see, I just use my scissors just to remove whatever little bits that were still being stubborn. But I find with something like this, it was pretty simple to die cut. Now here's where I made things a little more difficult, but there was a method to the madness. I am lining the back of the frame of this onesie, what's going to be the top, and I'm using red line tape on the back of it. I've talked about this before. When it comes to adhering acetate, you can use liquid adhesive. I try to avoid it if I can, because it's very easy for liquid adhesive to ooze out the edges when you're trying to adhere to plastic. Plus it doesn't always hold. Even good strong adhesive, it doesn't take much to remove it. I like what I call a dry adhesive, like red line tape, score tape works really well. I find those are the best. However, it always depends, one, on my mood, how much work I want to make for myself, and the level of difficulty. I found this little onesie shape not to be that difficult. I did speed this up in editing. It did take me a bit to get all of this adhesive into place. And honestly, you totally could just use just a good strong liquid adhesive. Just run a thin line of it all around and then press your acetate into it. It'd be fine. But this is also another way. And I have tons of this red line tape. And at times I would like peel off the backing, as I would kind of show here. And then that way I could kind of manipulate the adhesive like around the curves, that sort of thing, which made it a little bit easier. But again, you could just run a line of liquid glue. It would be fine. Sometimes I'm just like, nope, I'm going to do it this way. So that's what I did. So, and also for me, I do, no matter what, even if I use like the thinnest amount of liquid adhesive, when it comes to acetate, I still manage to get it to ooze out, and then it gets on the acetate, and then I'm annoyed and I'm trying to remove it, and Yeah. So I would honestly rather fiddle with something like this. And it didn't take that long. The second one I did off camera. And it's another one of those things where I kind of zone out. You know, I just, it's like watching a show, doing a thing, and not, you know, because it's kind of a bit of a tedious exercise. So once I had done that, I got the acetate that I die cut pressed into place. So that creates the front of my shaker, my window. And then for the foam portion, I am using some waffle flour 1/8 inch thick foam strips. Another option, if you don't, want to even do this, but like I remove the backing from the foam. So again, makes it flexible, and I can just work it all the way around all the curves, etc. Another thing you could do is just die cut multiples of the frames. I rarely ever do that. It is an option, especially if you're using heavyweight cardstock. But I would rather just do this. I find this is faster than die cutting multiples and adhering them together. And yeah, the only other thing you have to remember is if you're using foam and not die cuts, to make sure there are no gaps between the foam strips, because you do not want things falling out. So once I did that, I pour in my spring pop shaker beads. I went overboard. You don't need to use this many, but they're really cute. And they make the best noise. I love it. So I went heavy handed with these and used quite a bit in my shakers because they're adorable. They're adorable. So did all that, repeated the process on the second one. And then with that onesie shaker die set, there's some little accessories like this little like collar piece. And then there's little accessories you can use kind of to decorate the onesie. I didn't use any other pieces, but the collar piece I just thought was really cute. So I die cut that from scraps of the white cardstock. And then I used the exact same inks and just smaller blending brushes and blended it on. And when I was first blending this, it was looking a little too stripy. And I was like, oh dear, this is starting to look like almost like a clown collar. But I went back and forth here and there with the blending. And then again, the inks, as they, dry, they smooth out, they soften, and it didn't look like just straight up stripes. It's just a nice little blend with all the colors to match the background that I'd made. So got those all blended together and then adhered those to each of these little onesies just to give it that little extra something. This would also come in handy if you did manage to get any smears or oozing, at least around the top portion, there's always ways to to cover up the oops when they happen, So got those adhered, set them aside to dry. For my sentiment, I'm using the Pretty Pink Posh Baby Animals clear stamp set. It's so cute. I need more hours in the day. It's such a cute little set. I'm just using this sentiment from it and then the little welcome word. That's it. So I used some black cardstock, put my anti-static powder on it. That just helps the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped image. I'd put it in my MISTI, stamped the sentiment with clear embossing ink, and then coated them with detail white embossing powder, melting that then with my heat tool till everything is smooth and shiny and melted. And then while I had my MISTI out, I grabbed another scrap of just white cardstock, and I pulled the welcome word from that same little Baby Animals stamp set, got that into place, and then I'm just going to stamp that with some black ink, and stamped it. Moved the cardstock, didn't like how it stamped the second time, so I just rotated the cardstock, stamped it the third time. And then off camera, I just used my paper trimmer to trim it down into a little sentiment strip. And then for the heat emboss sentiments, I'm using my microfiber cloth and just a little bit of elbow grease to remove that excess anti-static powder on the cardstock. And then I use the coordinating wafer die, and I'm going to tape that into place so that the wafer die doesn't shift when I run that through my die cut machine. And then I'm going to die cut these sentiments, and then I'll die cut the remaining cardstock a couple more times with the coordinating wafer die, and I'll come back to that in a bit. So then for the insides of my cards are going to be top folding A2 white note cards. And I took just the base of the layered onesies stencil set. Got that into place. I used my trusty piece of Post-it tape, same one I've been using for weeks, because I'll just keep using it until there's nothing left of it, or until it's too saturated to use anymore. And that's just to cover where the score line is, so I don't get any ink or anything past the score line of the card. And then all the same colors that I've been using, but a much lighter hand, just very light, so I get all the color, but it's not super intense because you want to be able to easily write over this. So blended it in the exact same way I did the backgrounds. And I've got this fun little rainbow blend on the inside of my cards. And then I'm going to put those cards back into my Misty, and I'm going to just stamp the congratulations sentiment. This is from another new little set. This is the Pretty Pink Posh Sentiment Strips Occasions, because it goes with this release. Because again, it's not all baby. There's like, wedding themed items and grad, etc. So this little mini stamp set has a bunch of different sentiments that work for all those occasions. So I stamped that onto the insides of the cards, and then so that my card bases are done. So now I can adhere the card fronts to the card bases. And I've shown these before. These are just great big Hero Arts stamp blocks. I got a couple of these. I got one originally, and then I was like, these are perfect for weighing down my cards when I'm like adhering things like this. So then I got a second one, and they're perfect. Love it. So that just holds everything down to let the glue dry. So I adhered the card fronts to the card bases, and then adhered my little onesie shakers onto that, and just kind of kept moving the big blocks back and forth in between everything. So it just holds everything down, holds everything flat while the glue, takes a couple minutes to dry. And then that baby sentiment, I had die cut the scraps with the wafer die just to back it. I only did one extra layer. I'm not working aiming for, a ton of dimension, because I've already got a bunch of dimension with the shaker itself, but this just gives it that little extra something. So adhered those together, and then to adhere these on top of the onesie, I'm only going to put glue on each end of the sentiment to adhere it directly to the cardstock, because again, there's just no point putting it onto the acetate. And also I didn't want the glues oozing out. This is all that's needed, because once it's dry, the sentiment's not going anywhere. So just put it on those little edges, and then did the same thing to the second card front. And then for the little welcome sentiment strips, I'm going to put that red line tape on the back of those, because I decided to stick those right onto the onesie, aka right onto the acetate window. So I'm going to put that little red line tape on the back of there. And just like I was doing with the outline, I was just using the edges of my scissors. Sometimes on video, it looks like I'm being completely insane and I'm going to stab myself. I'm usually fairly aware. Really, it only takes once, because it's happened. I've actually cut myself more often with my paper trimmer, like my old, and I'm not even talking like the guillotine one, like the old, Fisker's one, I've cut myself with that more often than I have with scissors. So anyway, got those adhered. My final little bit of embellishment is some Pretty Pink Posh Sparkling Clear Confetti, one of my faves, and just figured out where I wanted to place those. And then I'm going to adhere these into place with little dabs of Craft Tacky glue. Once these are adhered, these cards are complete. So super fun. You can't go wrong with rainbow colors, a little bit of shimmery splatter, shakers. I don't do shakers very often, but they are so fun. This is one of the types of interactive, because that's also, I don't do a lot of interactive cards, but they are fun. And really, you sit there and play with it. I've played with these cards so many times since I made them, because they're fun. So like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links to all the things in the description box directly below the video. I will also, of course, post a direct link to my Instagram for anyone who doesn't already follow me on there, wants to check it out, wants to participate in the blog or in the Instagram hop, all that sort of stuff. That will be directly below. You just got to expand it, and all of it will be there, along with a link to my blog post where there'll be the pictures, picture links, etc. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos and thumbs upping and commenting. It really does help. I know I joke about the robot overlords, but it does. It helps with the algorithms, and I appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.